Welcome back to the Near Memo with Mike Blumenthal and me, Greg Sterling. And today, our very special guest is Will Scott, the originator of the widely used term Barnacle SEO. And we'll be talking about Barnacle SEO for the AI era, among other things. Will is a longtime SEO expert and our friend, and I've known Will for 20 years, maybe, or more than that, even.
More.
Yeah, which is
Yep.
kind of an amazing thing. Our podcast today is sponsored by GatherUp, gatherup.com, reputation management, and so much more. So make sure to check them out. So before we get into the substance of today's discussion, let's talk about the very annoying term geo, which is being proffered as an alternative to SEO for AI optimization. Every time somebody mentions it on LinkedIn now, like a crazy person, I have a little no geo sign that I attach to their post because I just think it's really just a bad idea to standardize around this term as AI optimization.
Have you
What do
seen
you?
the image that I've been using of the 1980s geo tracker?
I don't know if I have actually.
Yeah. So I found an image of a geo tracker, which for anybody who doesn't know, was a Suzuki product, rebranded
Yeah. The car, sure.
rebranded by GM, and it was a two-door convertible Jeepy thing. So, so every once in a while I'll post, never forget, this is the original geo tracker, and I'll post that picture, and that's my
You
commentary.
that's the point. There are multiple things that are geo. I mean, obviously geo targeting, geolocation, the whole location industry has been using geospatial, and it's really bad for anybody to be trying to promote geo as the term
But when you
for AI.
trace it back to its roots, though, it traces back to VCs who are heavily invested in AI. And when I say heavily invested in AI, I mean they are all in the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, right? I mean, OpenAI itself has received $80 billion in venture money. Who knows when that's ever going to
That's
be
crazy.
made profitable. And so these folks have massive, massive financial interest. They smell a slight cut in Google's fingers. There's a little bit of blood in the water. They're just trying to throw in some chum to see if they can churn it a little bit more to gain control of a narrative which favors their AI sort of hopes that they can hit the next rocket ship venture investment. And so from their point of view, this is just a marketing ploy, and it's a crass, self-interested, intellectually dishonest, and a bad word to boot. It's all those things.
Yeah, and I think
Sorry for the rant.
it had been bandied about a little bit before Andreessen Horowitz, threw their brand behind it. But I think there's any number of acronyms that are better, right? That are better and more descriptive. Because the reality is, if you look at AI SEO today, it's not just about optimizing for the generative engine, right? Which is what it is, generative engine optimization. It's about all of the things that you can optimize for presence in the places where people go to look for answers. So to me, like if I had to pick one today that wasn't SEO, and I'm still pretty strongly in favor of sticking with SEO, AEO, answer engine optimization, feels better to me, but I'm not like all the way there. I'm still calling it AI SEO because there's still a whole lot of SEO in AI.
Too many
Well,
vowels and not enough
that's
consonants
a
in
bunch of
this.
vowels, three vowels there, I think. AI, SEO, yeah, four vowels actually. Um,
AEO is three vowels right in a
Right.
row.
So I mean, I think so who was it? Mike King posted a couple of days ago, lamenting the fact that we in the SEO community couldn't get our act together before, before traditional media came out and rebranded what we do, based on that the article from the Northeastern magazine, to which I'm not going to name.
you're talking about the New York Magazine.
Oh, no! You got to, like, come on. That's what they want, Greg. They want you to talk about them, and I'm refusing.
That's a superficial article. It's quite a superficial article.
All articles on GEO end up being superficial. That's the point of
Well,
our
I mean,
conversation here with Will.
My favorite part about that article, though, is that if you actually open it up on the publication, and yes, I had to pay $4 to be able to do this, but if you open it up on the publication, there's like a blurb that's apparent in the background of the masthead that the text of which does not appear anywhere in the article, and it talks about manipulating the generative AI, like that it's really about sort of dishonest manipulation. And
You
I
mean
think it goes,
that's an endorsement? That's an endorsement, or they're characterizing what's going on?
that's what they're characterizing it as, just like the infamous alligator party.
Well, the
I'm not familiar with that social reference. Sorry.
It was the Verge. Don't you recall this, y'all? Come on.
blaming SEO for the shitification of
Yeah.
the internet. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
As opposed to blaming Google for the certification. Now, Google, on the other hand, as represented by this most recent conference down in Asia, wants to control the narrative around SEO. All of a sudden, they're finding SEO a valuable term and a valuable technique, and they're trying to retain the control of it. I mean,
well,
that to me
they're
says it all, right? It's like, okay,
right.
we've got sumo wrestlers battling over what are we going to call this? In the end, it's about sending customers your way, right?
Mike, I look, seriously, I had not thought of the competing narratives in the way that you just expressed until this conversation. And I think that's really interesting because as long as it continues to be SEO, it's still
Google
about
controls. It's still
search
about good.
engines. And since Google controls 95% of the searches, yeah, that's a very interesting and compelling point.
Yeah, there's I mean, we want to get into the main part of this discussion, but there's a bunch of interesting things that happened this week. I'll just mention.
Not the least of which is Apple's stock price going way up because they sucked up to Trump. I own Apple stock, by the way.
Me too. Me too. I sold that other one, but I still own Apple.
Okay, right.
Yeah, I mean, that's a totally different conversation about the integrity of these tech CEOs, which I don't want to talk about. But two quick things since we're sort of talking about industry developments. One is
I have a way
one.
of diverting Greg from whatever
That's
the main
fine.
topic
That's
is
fine.
very
We could
effectively.
just do that. We could just turn this into a free for all, which is fine with me. One is the Google post yesterday by Liz Reed. They got a lot of play
Mhm.
where she's repeating the party line now, which is more searches are happening. We're sending higher quality clicks to websites, to publishers, and click-through rates are stable. She says significantly relatively stable. So that's an interesting thing. Google is really pushing what, by all objective accounts, is a kind of a false narrative. There's some things about it that are kind of true, I think. A lot of the sort of low intent clicks are being weeded out by AI overviews, and maybe some of the clicks that are coming through are higher intent clicks. But interestingly, she exposed Google's definition of high quality clicks as one where there isn't an immediate bounce. That's their definition. If you don't immediately bounce back to Google from the website, that's a high quality click, which to me is a kind of an astounding thing.
Right. No, I think that this is like anecdotally what I'll tell you is having looked at, we've started implementing in our client dashboards referral tracking from the AI engines, and among that data is the actual time on site, the session time, right? And historically, traffic from Google has been, except for very high intent stuff, has been very short, right? Like less than a minute per session. But when I look at the traffic coming from the AI engines, granted it's a lot less, it's averaging in the like 3.5 to 4 minute time on site range. So to me, while we can't yet see the data from the AI overviews, what we're seeing in these dashboards that we're building for clients is that the traffic coming from AI is more qualified in that they spend more time on site. I haven't had enough time to spend with it to really tell whether it's got a higher
Conversions
conversion
would
rate.
be the ultimate
Yeah.
metric to use. But real
One
quickly,
comment about Google's
yeah.
narrative here, and at least in low funnel work, in our new research, what I'm seeing is a massive shift towards advertising, where user acceptance of advertising is going way up and click-throughs to websites are occurring through advertising. Even when AIOs are present, the AIOs are more, they affirm that the searcher searched for the right term, but they're being driven to a more attractive advertising presentation. And so the organic clicks are probably dropping, but the click-throughs to websites are not because they're being driven through ads. That
so
would
they
be
don't.
my spin on their narrative.
So Google specifies organic clicks specifically,
Yeah,
but
I don't know what
what
does
you
organic mean in this context.
well, but I mean, it means not an ad, presumably.
That's
But
what you take it to mean. It's not necessarily what they take it to mean. An organic click means it's not a zero
means a
click.
click by a human as opposed to a
Yeah,
machine, right?
that's right.
I'm
As
not.
opposed to a bot or
Yeah.
But
something.
just to clarify what you're saying, Mike, you're talking about local services ads in particular. You're not talking about all Google ads, right?
I'm talking about all ad types that we see in local
That
are
local ad category.
driving much
Yeah.
more attention than they used to. And if there is a reduction in clicks, it's because of these ads, not because of AIOs
Okay.
in local.
That was my original position. I wrote a blog post on this in I want to say in early 23, when everybody was freaking out because that's when we saw the original like decline in traffic that people were attributing to the initial launch of AIOs. And what I was seeing was that it was also concurrent to Google launching a whole bunch of new ad units above the
Right.
fold, right? To the point
Very
where
attractive, highly visual ad units. And an example is LSA compared to the local pack, as an example. In law, you see photo, you see years in business, you see ratings, reviews in the LSA. But when you get down to the pack, you see an ad at the top of the pack that makes it look sponsored. The whole pack looks sponsored. You don't see photos. You don't see as much communication options. I mean, there's a visual difference between the two as well. And I see this as reinforcing that point that Google's just pushing the traffic through ads. That's all.
So I saw a share recently. I know this is not yet on the topic of, of Barnacle SEO in the AI age, but I saw a share recently of an AI overview with inlaid, more graphical link units as the things on which you would click. What was posited around this was the idea that that's where they're going to be putting the ads.
For
And
sure.
as somebody who as somebody who has clients who do both paid and organic marketing, I'm actually really excited to have ads in the AI overviews and in AI mode because it means that we have a client who's in tourism and they have been primarily a content site for the last 20 years, right? And so you can imagine what's happened to their traffic. We rank we rank number one organically for things to
Which
do.
is 9 positions down the page or
Well,
12 positions down the page.
These days.
So for the phrase "things to do in New Orleans," we rank number one organically, and we are 2,700 pixels down the page.
Wow.
Right, that's like a full 3 scrolls.
Yeah. So the final thing I want to mention before we get into the Barnacle SEO for AI is
If we ever get there.
if we ever get there, is the Dattos and Rand Fishkin put out a report. It's really Dattos report, which is SEMrush, and then Rand comments on it in the document. And they put out a Q1 state of search report, and now they just put out a Q2 state of search report. And basically, the big headline is Google still dominates. Informational queries are the dominant query type on Google. Uh, Google hasn't really seen any significant share loss. But the thing that I latched onto was a decline in searches per user. So there's a 15-point drop from April of 24 to today, or June, I guess, in terms of searches per user, moving from 100 and something to 90 something. And this is a very interesting thing, because what I think it illustrates is Google's hold over people is slipping, right? People are using all kinds of different sites and tools to find information depending on the query and the category, and they're using AI a lot, but they don't stop using Google. They use Google for certain things, but they're using it perhaps more selectively than they would have. Whereas you would have come to Google for everything in the past, now you're making discriminations between what Google is good for and what AI is good for, and what Instagram is good for, and what Pinterest and Reddit are good for, et cetera, et cetera, et
Do you
cetera.
think that's generational though? I mean, I know in a lot of my maps research when I was doing surveys, you would use the mapping product you learned when you were 20 and you just kept using it, right? So I'm wondering how much of this behavior is just generational, like
Well, some
you
of
and
it
I and
certainly.
Will are grew up on Google,
I
but
don't use
young
Google anywhere near as much as
right,
I used to.
but younger people are growing up on TikTok, ChatGPT,
Hundred
whatever.
100%. I think the data show younger people are more inclined to use social media for certain things, TikTok, Instagram, Pinterest even. Yes, I think there is definitely a generational skew here, and older people are more loyal to Google. Younger people are less loyal to Google, and they're more inclined to use AI.
I would put loyal in air quotes here.
Well,
It's
that's a
behavioral
shorthand.
loyalty.
It's
Yes,
complacent,
yes,
right? I mean,
yes.
it's loyalty by
It's
complacency.
habit. It's habit. It's familiarity. I mean, there was a survey, a small survey that I wrote about a few weeks ago by an agency called UTech. It was only 150 people, but they were asking people to talk about perceptual differences between Google and AI, and they talked about local also. And most of the people in the survey had not used AI, but they trusted Google and they perceived Google to be better across the board. And that's a kind of a psychological moat, I think, that will be challenging for ChatGPT, as widely used as it is and as much brand equity as it has, to overcome.
I think there's a lot of nuance in the way those questions get asked, right? Because
For sure.
a lot of people don't realize that when they do that Google search today, that what they're getting is an AI overview, right? They just think it's Google.
They no. I asked people, have you seen AI overviews? And descriptively, I didn't say AI overviews. Have you seen an AI summary at the top of the Google search results? 72% said yes. Do you like them? Do you think they're helpful, useful? I think the overwhelming majority said yes. So people, I think, but I think what that really is not about the AI overview per se. It's about the chat experience that people like. People like the chat experience.
In our research, Greg, people use the AI overview as confirmation that they made the right search and to help them disambiguate, to refine their search. And thus they do like it because it's helpful to them.
Yeah.
They'll type in this long phrase that who would have thought you would type this long, crazy ass phrase in? And then the AI sort of says, maybe they're really asking about
So it
employment
helps them
lawyers,
refine. It helps them refine. Yeah.
or confirms that they're in the right place. I mean, in that sense, it is very helpful as a
Well,
disambiguation tool.
so we in the industry don't like AI overviews because of the impact on organic placement, but a lot of consumers do like them for reasons that you mentioned and for other reasons. But I think that a lot of the reasons that consumers like them is because they like the AI experience. The search interface, the Google traditional search interface, has been superseded by the chat experience. And Google is acknowledging that by trying to bring more and more of that experience into traditional search results. And I think people really like it. The big obstacle for people, to the extent that they have any sophistication about AI, is accuracy. That's that.
The challenge with the 10 blue links was you got a job to do, right?
Right.
So in the old Google search, I would do a search and I would get a list of links, and to actually get an answer, I'd have to click on those links and then kind of weigh the content that I
Right.
got to on whatever experiential metric I was using. But with AI overviews and with the beginning of ChatGPT, which is where I think people really got exposed to this, the handful that did, is it was just so much better, right? Because you get an answer. And I tell the story that my first experience with ChatGPT, this is kind of like, your first experience of other kinds. But my first experience with ChatGPT, I'm on an airplane and I'm pretending to work, and I'd heard about this ChatGPT thing and I'd signed up, but I hadn't really used it. And so I'm watching a trashy movie, right? And I remembered something, and so I typed into ChatGPT, what was the beef between Vin Diesel and The Rock? And I got a really good answer, right? And it knew the context of which I was alluding, which was a Fast and Furious movie, which was on the airplane screen. And then I took that same query and I went over to Google and I was like, wow, this sucks.
Yep.
This is a really crappy experience. And so
Yep.
even if ChatGPT was totally friggin' wrong, it at least gave me what felt like a valid response.
And a lot of the times, that's all you want in an informational query is a valid response. You don't want to become an expert. You just want sort
Yeah.
of high
Yeah.
Well,
level.
This
but
is where we really find the death of expertise, fellas, is like, is
all
that
right. So we're finally going to move into our topic today. Okay. All right.
Maybe.
Finally. Finally. No, we are.
Oh, okay.
So you
Oh,
coin. Yes. Zip it. you coined Barnacle SEO, and explain what that means. I mean, I think most of the people listening or watching this, listening to this or watching this will understand that. But explain what that means, and then what does that mean in an AI world?
So, way back in the day, and Greg, you and I actually came out of this world, there were these books in which they printed business information that got distributed by being thrown on people's doorsteps.
Yes.
And eventually you were able to opt out and say, please stop throwing these dead trees on my doorstep. And then eventually they just stopped making them because they were not very useful. But what they were is they were the kind of legacy approach to business information. And in the early days of the internet, or the early days of people getting into the internet, the mid thousands, these publishers were still the monolithic force in Google. So if I did a search for plumber near me or plastic surgeon in Encinitas, California, then I would most likely get what was then a Yellow Pages result. So it was sites like
yellowpages.com or
and
super
super
pages.
pages. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Right. And so when we first came up with this concept of Barnacle SEO, it was because of something that we had been doing all along, which was claiming those listings on behalf of our clients. And so the example that I showed, Greg, at SMX Local Mobile in San Francisco in 2008 was
Yeah,
actually like,
2008.
I know, right? Was a disaster remediation company in Rhode Island. And we were on the map and we had 9 out of 10 listings on page one. And the reason we did that is because we had really well optimized those listings in all of the places that we could so that our client would show up. So fast forward now 20 years, right? Or not quite 20 years, but really close. Yeah. And think about the way AI sources information, right? There were a number of studies that came out 3 or 4 weeks ago in which the various providers were identifying which sources were most prevalent in different engines. So Google had an affinity, ChatGPT had an affinity, Perplexity had an affinity, and of course it changes by vertical, right, by industry. And so there was only one winner, I'm sorry to say, and it was Wikipedia. And it was the
Well,
winner.
YouTube is pretty prevalent as well.
It's but
Not as
not
much.
monolithic, right? I mean, so YouTube was the next best option, and then right behind that, it was very variable depending on which of the engines you were looking at. And so when you consider how you effectively do the same thing that we did back in 2006, 2007, 2008, it's by assuring that your business, your entity is as well developed in all of the places that those engines are looking for information. Now, I think it's nigh on impossible for a local business to get a Wikipedia entry, but it's stupid simple for them to launch a YouTube channel, right? And to publish videos. It's also now that Instagram is starting to get crawled, since Meta opened the gates to the crawlers, it's really easy to publish on Instagram. Another one which is really quite prevalent is LinkedIn. And so LinkedIn Pulse and LinkedIn newsletters are very easy to get to show up in those various results. So you got to go industry by industry, and I think that's where it becomes actual work, is to determine which are the most likely publications for your industry that are going to show up in those places. And I would argue that for today, you really only need to care a lot about Google AI overviews and ChatGPT.
I would just add to your list that in food services and hotels, it's Yelp and TripAdvisor. And in non-competitive markets, a really easy thing to do is get on their 10 best list, which show up all the time
Yeah,
on both
Yelp
Google
10
and
best.
ChatGPT.
Yeah, Yelp 10 best is very commonly cited. But
And that's the other, I think, Barnacle SEO tactic, right? Is when you know that right this minute the AI engines are suckers for listicles, how hard is it, especially with deep research, how hard is it to build a listicle about anything for which you want to rank and then find a place to distribute it?
Yes, the 10 best local SEO consultants
Right.
or SEO firms,
well,
Yeah.
right?
I see a number of people doing, and this is a long-standing tactic.
So, Will, can you do the press release on that? Make me number 2, would you? You could be number 1. Make Near Media number 3, and let's see how we do.
Yeah, absolutely. We can do that.
Okay, deal. I
I
don't know
see a
who could be
lot of
4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We'll throw Darren and Joy in there, but down the list a little bit.
Yeah. I like
there are a bunch of people writing explainers or roundups of tools, inserting their own tool as one of them in that list.
Yes.
And there's a ton of that kind of stuff going on precisely for this purpose.
The other one is comparisons, right? Any
Right.
any SaaS tool is going to have comparison, our tool to their tool and 1,000 of them. And the reason is that people are doing those searches.
Well, when I was at Uberall a number of years ago, this was a directive from on high, is that we had to generate a whole bunch of these Uberall versus competitor kinds of things in a structured format. I don't know if any of those ultimately got published or any of them got ranked, but it was just an incredibly annoying thing to me.
Well,
Well,
it was annoying because you had to do it, right?
well,
Now,
I wasn't the one doing it, but it was you know, people genuinely need help understanding what the differences between these tools are. And there's too many tools, too many SaaS tools now, too many AI tools. It's very confusing. Everybody makes the same claims, and people genuinely want to understand what's the right tool for me. And Capterra and G2 don't really help, and Clutch doesn't really help. And, so what B2B buyers are increasingly doing is going to AI and saying, I'm looking at these three CRM systems. I'm a business that has these characteristics. Which one is going to be the best for me? That's a very helpful use case. It bypasses all the crap and all the spam on Google, all the cynical content on Google. But to what degree, this is rhetorical. You don't need to answer this. What degree is it drawing on that kind of self-promotional stuff that's now working its way into ChatGPT?
I think it's gonna be not too much time from now.
Yeah, it'll redefine geo as garbage engine optimization.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah,
There it is.
that's it.
We should start promulgating that concept and make it taint geo, make it
Be a leader in your
unpalatable.
field.
I love it. The but and not misaligned with what I was about to say either, which was that, like, if you think about those kind of comparisons that you were writing at Uberall, or the
I mean, everybody does it. In fairness to Uberall, everybody does some version of that. So I don't mean to single them out, but go ahead.
but well, yes, everybody does it, and now it's just so much easier, right? Because instead of having to have a low-paid intern do it, I can have the machine do it. And once I've defined the parameters, I can literally spit out thousands of these.
Right.
For instance, there's thousands of comparisons to make. Or if, for instance, you wanted to have, this versus that for this vertical, this versus that for this vertical, right? That's
Right.
really easy to do. And
Right.
similarly, in the local search space, it's not new that we have content spinners. It's just that the content spinners are so much smarter now, right? And they can actually take advantage of real research, or at least, real machine-based research.
Well, this is the machine successor to the content farms that were popular in the, you know, for whatever time frame they were in. Okay, so
So is
how
there
is
any
there?
hope of return to authenticity on the internet? Is it just naive? I
Well,
mean,
to paraphrase one of my favorite quotes of all time, Mike, the most important thing in business is authenticity. If you can fake that, you've got it
Yeah,
made,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Well,
So,
that's why we see Reddit showing up everywhere. Reddit is one of the top sources in ChatGPT.
and
That's why
totally authentic, right?
well, there is.
okay, notwithstanding that a lot of the subreddits that I'm looking at are
Getting
spam.
spammed. They're getting spammed more and more because of its success.
Yes.
Because Google elevated Reddit to such a visible place, the spam has inevitably come.
But I do think that in kind of niche subreddits, Reddit has supplanted the old school forum, right? There used to be a forum on anything. I was rebuilding a van a few years ago when I thought I might be a van lifer in retirement. And there's like a huge Ford Transit forum where everybody talks about the things that they're using. And so I think a lot of those conversations are legitimately happening on Reddit, but I also think that there's just a ton of spam there.
So let's talk about, are there any shortcuts to identifying these sources in these kind of local verticals? Are there any tools that you're using? Is there any quick way for people to sort of figure out, other than doing searches themselves or running queries, what these common sources are?
So I have probably the the greatest percentage of my time over the last few months has been in automation and software building, right? And it's using no code and low code tools to do this. And there are APIs for everything. So one example is data for SEOs or data for SEO has both an API and an MCP server, a model context protocol server, which is basically it's like a super API, if you will, and it allows the machines to talk to each other rather than going through this open API. And that's a really simple explanation that bears no technical aptitude, so please don't hate me. But data for SEOs, they have SERP data, right? So you can look at the data for SEO SERP API. And so if I was trying to figure out, I'm going to build this probably in the next week or two, if I was trying to figure out per per category that I serve, per business category, I would use something like Make or N8N or probably Cursor because I'm really into Cursor right this minute. Cursor is a no-code software tool that basically allows you to code by prompt, and I would use some combination of either the data for SEO, tool, or there's another one that I used, which is just about scraping SERPs for another project. And so when you can scrape the Google search results, you can see what the actual sources are. And similarly, you can do this as well in OpenAI. So if I was trying to figure out what my most common sources are, I would determine what are all of the questions that somebody might be asking when what they really want is what I provide. And I would query the engines one at a time for each of those prompts, and I would see what's showing up. And then
Using these tools,
yeah,
not
yeah,
manually.
absolutely not manually. The one tool I built, I can't remember, maybe it was Firebase. No, Firebase is what I used to scrape the site. But so I built a tool. I wanted to know I was interested in the concept of query fan out that people have been talking about. And so what I did is you input your URL and the tool determines what the primary competitive query ought to be. And then it goes and it queries through one of these SERP APIs and finds all of your competitors. And then it identifies from your site what are the most relevant entities, and it compares you to those other sites.
Thank you for listening to part one of our interview with Will Scott, CEO of Search Influence. Join us next week for part two, where we'll discuss tactics and tools to leverage the current world of AI SEO.